Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Bobby, and we're back talking cameras once again here at Jewel at Singapore. And this is the latest, greatest, the biggest thing I think at Changi Airport. You don't even have to leave the airport now to see Singapore. It's all here, it's amazing. And talking about big things, we're talking about a camera that was pretty much almost every reviewer's camera of the year last year. We didn't get our hands on it till now. It's been a long haul to get it, but we finally did with some pretty amazing lenses, including this. We're here to talk about the Fujifilm X-T3. But besides a review on this camera, is it as good as the Sony A7 III, or is it better? We think it's slightly better, and we're going to tell you why right now. Now, to talk about the X-T3, you have to talk a little about Fujifilm's ecosystem. Now, they're APS-C and medium format. There's no full frame in their lineup. So this is pretty much the APS-C camera a lot of people have been wanting, and they delivered it in spades. Let's talk about what's inside of this. First, we got the 26.1 megapixel APS-C X-Trans CMOS for backside illuminated sensor. You got the new X processor. It's a quad-core processor in this versus the X-T2, which is a dual-core processor, so there's a lot more power behind this camera. In terms of ISO, you've got 160 up to 12,800, expandable from 80 to 51,200. That's pretty equivalent to what's out there on the market. 3.69 million dot EVF on this, and on the touchscreen on the back of it, it's about 2.16 million dots, so it's pretty clear. Not the highest resolution out there, but it's good enough for your photos to see what you need to see. Articulating screen on the back of this as well. Battery life is pretty decent. Per battery, it's around 350 to 400 shots. That's in photography, of course. If you're shooting 4K, it's gonna drop down a bit. But speaking of 4K for a moment, you can do 4K 60 frames per second internal recording at 10-bit 420. But if you record out to an Atomos, let's say Ninja 5, for example, you can get 10-bit 422, of course, with the Fujifilm log on that. So you're pretty set on this. This is pretty much one of the best hybrids on the market. Everybody said it. We believe it is so. But it's time to talk a little bit about the aesthetics and about the design. Fujifilm's design it's beautiful. If you like that classic film-esque look to your cameras, you're gonna love the Fujifilm X-T3. And I'll tell you what right now, do yourself a favor, do not wait, get yourself the battery grip or the vertical grip for it, because it just changes the entire feel of this camera. This camera is a very small camera, so if you have small hands, you're gonna like it, but if you have larger hands like myself, this battery grip is gonna come in handy, especially when you're using the 200 f2 lens on this run. I mean, you do need it. But look at this, it just has the really great ergonomics, plus it extends the battery life. So then you get 2 batteries in the grip, 1 battery in the camera, 3 batteries total. If you want all day shooting, you're gonna be shooting wildlife, you're gonna be shooting on the streets, shooting 4K video as well, you're gonna need that extra power. This delivers it, and to me, honestly, ever since I put the battery grip on it, I haven't taken it off. I just love the feel of the X-T3 with it. It does come in 2 colors, black and then silver and black. Depends on your preference. The silver and black is a little bit more of that vintage look to it. The black is a little bit more, I would say more sports driven. And especially when you have it paired to a lens like this, it looks really good. Also, I do have to point out that this does not have IBIS inside of the camera. A lot of people were saying, why doesn't it have IBIS? Who knows? Honestly, maybe it'll come out with the X-T4, but a lot of lenses like this one has image stabilization built into it. So, you know what? It works fine when you have the right lenses paired to it, but if you don't, just watch your shutter speed, shooting low light, because you will get some camera shake. But that's pretty much the gist of this camera. But what is it like to use? That's where it gets interesting. So enough about the specs. What's this camera like to use? And like a lot of other reviewers out there, I've really enjoyed using it. Once you set it up, which takes a little bit of time because there's a lot of customization that you can do with this camera, once you get that out of the way, this camera performs admirably. The autofocusing is quick. Eye tracking is good, especially after the latest firmware update. Low light, no issues at all. Video is great as well. Fujifilm has done such a good job with this camera, you just can forget about all that stuff that you will look at in a camera as like, is it good or not? You forget about all that, and you could just enjoy shooting. And one of the great things about Fujifilm cameras, of course, is the film profiles, which everybody talks about. Acros, Velvia, Chrome, I mean, there's a number of them, right? And if you've never tried them before, do it. It's just, You get that film-esque look to your images, but it just makes photography more fun because it kind of brings you back to those days of, throwing film in your camera. And I still do that once in a while. Speaking of which, we gotta talk about this lens. Oh, do we ever? I like good glass on this show. I talk about it time and time again. Fujifilm knocked it out of the park. The Fujinon 200mm f2 is a beautiful telephoto prime lens. It's a big, look at this thing, it's massive. And because it's like this light silver color to a black body, it looks even bigger, right? But man, the photos that come out of this lens are beautiful. I went to the zoo, I shot tigers, I shot cheetahs, I shot zebras, I shot some sort of monkey. I don't know what it is. I didn't look at the sign. Anyway, the images are breathtaking. And it just is an amazing piece of glass. Now, it's not cheap. I think this is probably the most expensive lens they have on the market right now, but rightfully so.
Now, I also want to show you guys how the camera actually performs out in the field. So we're looking at footage from the X-T3 paired with the Fujinon 200mm f2. And we're at the karting arena in Singapore. I'm recording this footage with the Adamas Ninja 5, and I wanted to do this to show you how this camera works tracking subjects, high frame rate, basically like sports mode. And the camera does a great job when it has that area in focus, but there's a problem with this footage if you're seeing it. It has nothing to do with the camera. It's my choice in lens. This lens is far too long for this go-kart track. And I even put the 1.4 teleconverter that comes with it, giving it a focal length of about 450 millimeters when you convert from APS-C to full frame. Far too long for the track, but in that short area where it can track and focus, the camera does an admirable job.
This lens is one of my favorite lenses I've used in a very, very long time. And I gotta tell you, like I said before, if you have the means and you like that kind of photography, you will not be disappointed. But it is heavy. See? Work out. Oh. Oh. All right, now we moved on to a smaller lens, obviously, and a much lighter camera system. This is the 35 1.4 spherical Fujinon lens. Now, this lens has been around for quite some time, and when you do the conversion, of course, to full frame, it's about a 50mm f1.8 thereabouts. So it's sort of like that Kit 50 that a lot of camera companies have out there. Now, this lens will perform a little bit different on the X-T3 than some of the newer XF lenses out there, and the reason is that the autofocus motor isn't as, I don't want to say as good, but it's not as modern or as current to match the speed of the X-T3. So while it's a very good lens in terms of image quality, you will find yourself sometimes dealing with a little bit slower autofocusing, and it can be a bit frustrating at times shooting in, let's say, lower light situations. In bright light, you're pretty much good, but in lower light or nighttime, you will find that it hunts a little bit more, and you sometimes miss those shots. But overall, it's not a bad lens. Fujifilm doesn't really make a bad lens, but just some are better than others. Another lens here I have on the X-T3, which is one of my favorites out of the Fuji system, is the 23mm f2 Fujinon spherical XF lens. This is a phenomenal lens. It's super small, compact, light. It's got a beautiful build to it. The aperture ring's got a nice click to it, so you know where you're at on this. Now, it's not the fastest lens, because when you do the full frame equivalent, it's about a 35mm f2.8. It's great for street photography. So if you're in the streets of Europe, or if you're just walking around, you want to capture those shots, you're not going to have that great depth of field that you might get on a faster lens like a 1.2 or 1.4, but it's just a great go-to lens, and it's like an essential prime you need to have in your kit, especially paired with the X-T3, because that XF branding on it means that it's a more modern lens, faster autofocus motor inside of this, so it locks on a lot quicker than, let's say, the 35 1.4 I just had on the camera. So to me, this is a must-have if you have an X-T3 or any Fujifilm camera. The 23 f2, mwah! Now we're talking about a lens that could be one of my favorites as well. I have a lot of favorites, by the way, but because Fujifilm makes some really good lenses. This is the Fujinon spherical 56mm f1.2. Now, this is their fastest lens that they make, and it's also a portraiture lens, because when you kind of do the conversion again, 56 becomes about a 75, 1.2 becomes about a 1.6, 1.7, right around that area. So this is a very fast lens. It's great for portraitures, beautiful bokeh. And because it's an XF lens, it also has that faster autofocus motor inside of it, so it actually responds really well with the X-T3. Now the aperture ring on this is not as clicky as the 23 f2. It's a little bit smoother, and you can easily go from 1.2 to 1.4 without an issue, but sometimes I wish it had a little more tensor ring to it so I could lock it into 1.2 and I knew I wouldn't move into 1.4 on accident. Sometimes that happens, but besides that, this lens is beautiful. Now we're moving on to our final lens here, and to me, I think this is the lens that you should buy first before you get any other lens with the X-T3 system. Reason is, it's a zoom 16 to 55 f2.8 XF lens. This lens optically is beautiful. It's got that great range in terms of your focal distances, so it's got you covered. 2.8, so it's fast enough. Forget that kit lens. Sorry, Fujifilm, but the kit lens, the 1655 f5.6, nah, out of the way. This is the lens you want to get. It's a little bit more expensive, but trust me, you will get so many more beautiful shots out of this lens than the kit lens. Especially in lower light situations, you're going to appreciate this lens after one night of shooting. You're gonna be, I'm so happy I got this over the kit lens. Trust me on that. I tested the kit lens. This is so much more superior. And yeah, it's a heavier lens, it's a bigger lens, but if you just need one lens to go to travel with, this is it. 1655, which is about a 2375 or about 2470, about that. About a 2470 lens. This is what you want. Now the lights are going down here. It is nighttime at Jules, so hence why we're kind of filming in a little bit lower light situation. But over the past number of minutes, you're probably thinking that I don't have anything negative to say about the X-T3, and this is a glowing review, and you probably think I'm paid by Fuji Singapore, which I'm not, by the way, and all this equipment goes back to them tomorrow. But there are some things that did bother me a little bit using the camera, but are things that you only notice after using it for a few weeks. First, the viewfinder. Now, it has a $3.6 million EVF, so that's no issue with that. But it's the distance from the display on the back that has a little bit of a problem for me because I have a little bit of a longer nose. So when I put my eye to the viewfinder or to the eyepiece, my nose is touching the display. Now, because you can control the focusing point with the display with your thumb, or with your finger, or with the joystick, my nose is sometimes guiding the focus point to the left of the display on accident. Now, there are ways around this, but I did wish that maybe Fujifilm would make it like an eye extension piece for the viewfinder, so for us folks that have longer noses, we wouldn't move the focusing point. Not a deal breaker, but it's something that you do notice. Also, the vertical grip. I like this vertical grip. It feels great in the hand. Gives you extra battery power as well. But there's something with the shutter release button here. It wobbles a little bit. Now, I don't know if this is because I have a demo unit or this is just the way Fujifilm makes it. But I did notice I was getting a little bit of that play on the button here on the main body. So what happens here is when you have your hand grip like this, you feel that button sort of wobble a little bit underneath your hand. It's a little, it's not like uncomfortable, but it's something that you notice, and it kind of takes away from that solid feeling that the X-T3 has. Again, not a deal breaker, but it's a small thing that you notice. Also, the image stabilization. Now, people have complained about this. It's something that you really only notice when shooting low light or shooting with a lens that's not an XF lens because it doesn't have that faster autofocusing system to it. So you will find yourself getting a little bit of camera shake once in a while. You can combat it, but it is there and you do notice it. Besides that, it's a solid camera. I mean, Fujifilm has really dominated the APS-C market. I mean, there's other camera systems out there by Sony, by Leica that do an admirable job. I mean, Sony's autofocusing is better than the Fujifilm, but the overall package of the X-T3 to me makes it a better camera system. And talking back to the beginning of this video when I said, is it better than the A7 III? To me, it is. And I say this because I feel that this camera has more character than the A7 III. The A7 III is really a camera that a lot of people buy because of the video functionality first and foremost, and it takes decent photos. But it has really no character. It's just a good all-around camera. The Fujifilm X-T3 is a beautiful hybrid. It takes great 4K video, 60 frames per second internal recording. You have great photography aspects to this camera. You've got the film profiles to it. It's decent in low light. It's not as good as, of course, a full frame system, but it's good enough, and especially if you put in Lightroom or Capture One, you're gonna have no issues with it. But it just feels like an all-around better system for me, especially with the Fujifilm lenses. Once you get to trying a number of the lenses, you really see the potential of the X-T3. and why I really enjoyed this camera. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the X-T3. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. We appreciate you following us, your comments, your feedback, your support. Follow us on Facebook. Until the next one, take care.